Why doesn't he sue?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, we really need more people that can stand up and challenge media organizations in ways that it's going to make them hurt. I've written a lot about this before where, the media in this America have, amazing libel protections. It's very hard to sue a media company, especially if you're a public figure, and do anything with that. And for a long time, I think that was a source of pride in this country. In the UK and other countries, there are a lot of frivolous libel lawsuits, but we've kind of gone to the extreme. Like I think maybe 60 years ago, there was a big public interest in protecting large media organizations that were doing important, corruption reporting and things like that at a time when there weren't a lot of alternatives to do media stuff. Now, increasingly, you see things like the Covington kid incident, just really capricious, mean stuff coming from the media, directed to people clearly for political motivations, where they're using these libel laws as a sword rather than a shield. I mean, they know they can't be sued, or they know it's going to be difficult or costly to sue them, so they're just aggressively going after people in ways that are brutally unfair.
You were saying before that Times v. Sullivan was kind of assuming that the media organizations were going to be ethical and maintain that, and
which was always kind of a bad assumption, but it was a much better assumption 60 years ago than it is now, when clearly they just aren't. I mean, if you see what goes on, in CNN or any, frankly, major news organization where the New York Times editorial staff literally says words are violence. I mean, that is not a regime that we can prop up, under the color of, law. That needs to, ordinary citizens need, and even public figures like Joe Rogan need to have an opportunity to go after these people and stop them from doing that stuff again. Give them an incentive, bloody their nose, say, don't lie about me again.
When did the media become such an obvious propaganda machine? And I don't mean just politically. I mean, you look at Rotten Tomatoes.
Right.
The film Death Wish with Bruce Willis. This is a studio film. This is a A-lister Hollywood celeb. But Death Wish got panned by critics because they called it a gun nut masturbation film.
Right.
And it wasn't. It was a revenge film like any other action film, but they went nuts on it. And that said to me, it's not about making money for Hollywood. It's about making sure only specific ideologies get the promotion from the machine.
I think it's Jon Stewart. Jack Posobiec said this on the show last week, that Jon Stewart basically weaponized comedy and politics and combined them. And I was like, well, gee, I love Jon Stewart. It hurt to hear that. But before that, it didn't exist. And after that, it started to.
We also have to admit that this is their greatest weapon, but it's also their greatest weakness. Because the more disingenuous, the more they lie, the more they just make stuff up and attack children or grandmothers who meme at their door and try to dox them like CNN did. The more they just become more and more outrageous, the more people realize, hey, this is getting to a really sick level, and we need some alternatives here immediately. And they will turn to alternatives.
The Onion kind of started it too. When people saw how popular it was to just say things that were patently false and like put a little disclaimer at the bottom, be like, by the way, this is all a joke. It was dangerous, dangerous.
Yeah, I think for a long time, we had a healthier culture in the sense that there was kind of a cultural realm and there was a political realm. And there was a little bit of overlap, as there always was. But by and large, those things were kept separate. And, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of the postmodern influence, I think. Just everything got crazy meta. Like Andrew Breitbart used to say, politics is downstream from culture. And that's true to a large extent. And there was this kind of like meta realization across the board that was the case. So all of a sudden, the narratives in culture literally became the quote unquote narrative, meaning that they realized that they could use that to control things politically. So, in the case of Dune or something, we can't just talk about how House Harkonnen, is an interesting metaphor that might have some salience for our political situation or whatever. It immediately becomes a method of attack for Tim simply because he didn't enjoy a movie. Everything is political now.